to this week's bonus episode of the Irish Podcast. Every Monday, we'll be sharing stories of our friends in Italy and Ireland. In today's episode, American writer Jeremy Hawkins shares his journey from North Carolina to Florence. So, howdy. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Hawkins. I'm the new co-host. Nice to be here. Nice to meet you.
I love your Irish accent. Where are you from, Donegal?
I'm laying it on thick. I'm really trying hard here.
Can you introduce yourself? So, who are you? Where are you from? All that jazz.
My name is Jeremy Hawkins. I'm from North Carolina, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, in the United States of America.
Just give us a little bit about me.
I am, we'll say, 40-ish.
Okay, we'll go with that, yeah.
I grew up in North Carolina. I went to school there. I've lived in a number of places, but never lived in Europe before. So this was a new phase in my life moving here, which I guess we'll talk about.
Yeah. And how long have you been living in Florence now?
I've been here for 5 years.
Whoa.
Just came a little past 5 years. No, sorry, a little past 4 years. 5 years with my Italian girlfriend we met in America.
Let's jump into a little bit about, so everybody wants to know.
Everybody's asking.
Everybody's asking.
There's a buzz.
We actually do have quite a lot of, listeners from the United States. That's our biggest audience.
Really?
Yeah.
So you can't go out in like New York because you just get mobbed by.
That's it. Yeah. All those people, all those fans. Whoa. Can you give us a little bit from college? Mm-hmm. Just like give us a bit of you didn't go to university straight out the gate, did you? You went working first.
I took my university course was a little strange. I took a semester off and then went to college when I was, 19, and went through college for about 2.5 years before I had a little bit of a mental breakdown and dropped out of school with 1 week left in the semester and failed all those courses and stayed out for 1.5 years just working and getting my brain straight and always kind of staying in my hometown. I dropped out of school and hitchhiked across the country. Went full Jack Kerouac. And then needed to take a little while to get my stuff back together, but went back and finished school when I was 23, I guess.
And what was the degree in?
The undergrad degree was in psychology, which was sort of a lack of a better thing to choose degree. I did the
exact same thing. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. This would be free therapy.
I'm a writer, and I started with literature, but found studying literature really annoying because they wanted me to repeat what they thought about books, and it was never about what makes a book good, and I was always coming from an artistic point of view. So anyway, I switched to psychology, thinking that might apply to writing, etc. And then I graduated and went through a series of doomed relationships that were also lovely in my 20s, working retail and writing. At that point, I kind of committed to trying to be a writer, but doing it pretty much completely on my own throughout my 20s. And then when I was about 30, I went to graduate school at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, which is at the beach in North Carolina, and was there for 3 years and got an MFA in creative writing.
Yeah, and you were saying your mom was the one that pushed you to do that because you were like, I could either go to this high-paying job business route, or
I had a really sexy job putting shoes on people's feet. I was selling running shoes. We're sitting here smoking cigarettes and drinking beer, which should tell you how passionate I was about the field of running. But I got into it with one of those doomed relationships, and we were running the store together, and they had handpicked us to open a store of our own. They were going to give us a store that we would work to own, and these stores make money. This franchise makes money.
It's mad.
And we almost literally signed on the dotted line. We were moving forward. And my mom came to me one day and she said, Jeremy, you're not happy. You are not, I don't think you want to do this. And I was like, what are you talking about, Mom? She's the most fiscally responsible person that you've ever met. On top of being amazing in many other ways. She's very she takes care of her shit. And she said, you're not happy. I think maybe you should recommit to writing and go to school to study writing. The last thing I would ever expected her to say. And I did it. And I went back and no regrets. I wrote my novel when I was in grad school. You have to kind of produce a book by the end of grad school as a thesis, and I produced a novel. And a year after grad school, it got published.
Amazing.
So that's the story of the novel. Yeah.
So, what is your novel about? I'm really sorry, I haven't read it.
Well, you haven't read it.
I know. I didn't prep for this interview, Jerry. I'm very sorry.
The novel is called The Last Days of Video. It was published by Counterpoint Press, which is a great independent press based in California.
I do know it's inspired by an Irishman, though.
It is inspired by an Irishman. It is directly inspired by my working in a video store. One of my many retail jobs was working in a great independent video store in Chapel Hill called VisArt Video. I worked there for 10 years. And from the beginning, wanted to write something set in a video store. It took me a very long time, however, to figure out how to do that and to be good enough to try to write kind of a funny, heartfelt book set in a video store. And Dylan Moran is the one who really opened it up for me, watching Black Books and the structure of the silliness of that show and the structure of the characters, and particularly the Bernard Black character I took him as my own main character.
Yeah.
And slightly molded it. I mean, and reference Black Books in the book. So you know that I'm stealing. I mean, it's completely obvious. It's not breaking news here. And yeah, it was, I'm very, it's a long story, but I'm very proud of that book. It's not
we'll put a link in the description if anyone wants to buy it.
Yeah, it's a thing that was 100% me, and I think it's one of those things that you feel proud of because only you could do it because of my experience. And it might not be the highest literature of all time, but I think it is an original thing, and I'm really, really proud of it. And that's the thing. I know a lot of writers who have their first novel published and they look back on it and they're really, really cringy about it, or they regret they published too early. And I was just still really proud of the process of that book, writing it and getting it published, and it was great.
Amazing. So then you kind of moved more into like writing and working in literature and stuff after your degree.
Yeah, I basically after I published the novel, was expecting fame and fortune and offers to get right and make lots of money, and none of that happened. And I realized I was just working in a bookstore. I was the exact same dick that I was before.
You moved from videos to books.
I moved from videos to book. Doomed industries across the board. Enough bookstores are not doomed whatsoever. They're doing just fine. And I kind of bottomed out a little bit there, like emotionally in certain ways and creatively. But during that time, realized I needed to get my shit together. And so I started copy editing for a living and writing for textbooks and magazines and journals as a freelance gig at first, just to make some side money. And then it became my career. Not a thing that I'm super passionate about, but a thing that it has enabled me, for example, to move to Italy because I work online and keeps me in the world of words, which has been really great. At the same time, I also started writing screenplays and had a little bit of success doing that.
We're very, very excited about Jeremy's current part-time project.
We'll tell you all about it. Or maybe we can't talk about that right now. We got some things in the works.
Like season 4, it'll be a Netflix series, so it's all good. It's all good. So that kind of leads me to why did you move to Florence?
I moved to Florence. Well, I knew you were going to ask that question. I was trying to think about how to answer it. And it's really that sort of two things were kind of happening at the same time. The first was that I was working in a bookstore, but I had gotten this job and my career was going better. I was making money for the first time. I'd had the success of this novel. So this thing I'd worked for my entire adult life. Things were really good in many ways, but I just wasn't terribly happy. I wasn't. I'd gone through some depression, but I wasn't depressed. But it was kind of like low grade depression, anxiety, kind of all the time, and it just wasn't. Didn't feel really great for a long time, for years.
And were you back in your hometown at this stage?
I was back in the hometown the entire time. And so the idea, there had been a kernel of an idea to move abroad for a long time, and I thought a lot about England, Ireland, Scotland. I had traveled there. I was like, oh, that sounds
because
really
you lived in New York for a year. You lived in New Zealand for a couple of months. Like you had traveled a bit.
I traveled a bit. I mean, maybe a little bit more than your average American. But I never really. I guess I lived in New Zealand. I traveled there for 8 months at one point. Yeah. There was always the plan to come back. I had never properly moved there. So I thought, I don't know if I prescribe to that idea that you change your geography to change your psychology, but I figured, why not? That might
works for me.
Right? Yeah. And so that was one thing that happened. The other thing that happened is that I met the love of my life at a pub in Carrboro, North Carolina, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And her name's Annalisa. She's Italian. She was there teaching for a year at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. I pretty much fell in love right away. I signed
She
up.
is a darling
Thank
of
you
a
very much.
person.
I signed up for my first Italian class 2 weeks after I met her, and I didn't tell her because I didn't want to terrify her. But I was like, this is gonna happen. I got to win her. I got to win her over. And so that happened. I never thought about moving to Italy. It was never a thing. But we literally within a couple of weeks or a month of knowing her, I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna maybe try to move to Italy. And it's like the least surprised my parents ever were. When I told them that I was in love with Annalisa and that I was going to move to Italy, and I was scared to tell them, and they were like, "No, we know, we've met her, we understand. You're the guy that hitchhiked across the country, like we know that
We get it, yeah. So
we're back, everyone.
We're back,
Jane and Jeremy, the hosts of the Irish podcast,
Irish American podcast.
The Irish American podcast.
So you fell in love. You decided to move.
I did.
That brings me on to
I fell in love and decided to move. It did take a little bit of convincing. I just want to put that out there. Okay. And Annalisa knows that this was my experience, that I was the first one to say I love you. And when I first broached the idea of moving to Italy, she was like, no. it was basically a no to start. But I had anticipated it. She had not been in like a long-term relationship really, but she'd been in some kind of medium-term relationship, but nothing really long, and not anything where you would like move to another country to be with somebody.
That's scary. That's a lot of responsibility.
And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna take that punch in the gut and just keep moving forward. I wore her down like all true romances.
So that leads me, because a lot of listeners are like, how do you move to Italy? And obviously for us, we're in the EU. It's really easy for us. But like, I
hate you for it.
I know. So if somebody wants to move, what do they have to do, especially if they're coming from America?
Well, as an American, I took, obviously it helps just on logistical and kind of cultural, for introducing yourself to a new culture, to have an Italian partner.
Yeah.
So I came here and I had ready-made community in a lot of ways, and her friends who are all very lovely people, and she helped me find my first apartment and my second apartment, and then we moved in together. That's a long story. So that helped a lot with a lot of logistical things on the ground. Like I remember when I was first going to move here, I had to do a lot of paperwork stuff, which we'll talk about, and that where I put my energy. I was like, "Babe, you gotta figure out all where I'm going to live." Like I just can't think about that. And she, amazingly helped me figure all that stuff out. And then to have friends and not be alone. I mean, that's just to move and not know anybody is a whole different scenario than what I went through. As far as the logistical part and the paperwork part, it's a nightmare. And like it's coming from America, it's much different, obviously, as you said, from coming from within the EU. I came as a student, so there is a way that even somebody who's and they're around 40, like I am, around 40 years old, you can still be a student. Yeah, I'm 48. And my girlfriend, who did teach Italian to foreigners for a long time, found a school in Florence, a language school that teaches Italian, and you pay them to go to school for a year, so you have to pay a lump sum. I think it was about 2,000 euros or whatever, maybe a little bit less.
That's not bad.
And they help you with all the paperwork, and you need sort of specific paperwork to then submit to the embassy in Italy to get your first visa. And then that visa can then transition if you continue your schooling, which you can do not indefinitely, but for like 3 or 4 years, you can do that. Can transition into a permesso di soggiorno, which is a permit to stay.
Yeah, and that's the process that you're going through right now.
That's the process I've gone through every year since I've been here. So my first permesso, my first like 3 permessos were all student permesso di soggiornos. And now I'm in the process of, and fingers crossed, it looks like it's all happened, switching to a different kind of permesso scheme, where if you're in a relationship with an Italian and you have residency together, you can get a permit to stay that lasts 5 years.
So it's just a lot less paperwork.
It's a lot less paperwork. So every time you have to do a permesso, you have to get all this paperwork together. You have to go to the post office and send in a very complicated application that even Italians can't do. You have to go to a place to help them. They help you put it together because it's so complicated. You mess up one thing, you don't get the thing. And then you send that off and you have to pay all this money, blah, blah, blah. And then you have to go at least 2 times to the police station, which is called questura. And here in Florence, that means waiting for at least 6 hours in a line. And the dungeon of hell is the questura here in Florence.
Everybody hates it.
I should post pictures. You should have an amazing picture. It really looks like the waiting room of hell. I mean, when you're in there. I mean, there are pigeons that are like with no feet, literally walking around. I swear to God, like they're not walking very well. We were there. Annalisa had to come with me. It was about 6 months ago. We went to the Questura for this new process. And there was just this family and this kid. This kid was walking around. He didn't look too good. We're just kind of watching him. And he just leans forward and just vomits onto the floor. He's like all over the floor. And his mom's like, yeah, that's what happens. And if nobody is like it, because it's a terrible, terrible place.
Oh my gosh.
So that's a simplified description. I mean, if I could, there's no way I can go through every single step.
Of course, yeah.
But the advice that I always give to people, because you meet a bunch of tourists here or people traveling here or thinking about moving to Italy.
Yeah.
And the main advice that I always give people, especially Americans, if they have to go through the same process I do, is to prepare yourself to be frustrated and disappointed at just about every step.
Yeah.
That way, when something miraculously does work without a problem, you'll be really happy. But most of the time, you're going to go to a place and say, oh, this is not right. You're going to have to go to this other place to get this other document and get it stamped at this other place. And you have to buy a Marco di Bollo, which is like this stamp. And there's lists and lists and lists of things.
Yeah.
And it's always wrong. And you get a different answer from different people.
So would you recommend, if people had the money, to just get a lawyer, get a solicitor? Yeah,
absolutely. I didn't have the money, so couldn't really do that.
Yeah.
And because I had Annalisa to help with the Italian angle, that helped a lot. And then the school where I went was very helpful in organizing. Well, you need to do this and this, and they helped a lot.
I do want to just touch on, for any American listeners out there, that Italy have just come out with a digital nomad visa.
The last couple of months, I think.
Literally a month.
They talked about it for years. So they talked about it since I first moved here.
So Greece have come out with one, Turkey have come out with one. But yeah, Italy have finally come out with their one. So there's a couple of different logistics. You have to have been self-employed for 2 years. So you can either go down the student route or the digital nomad visa route, or
the marriage route or the
marriage route. Yeah.
Di fatto. And then as an American, you can come here for just 3 months on your visa. So when I first came here, I did a trial run just with my visa, and I stayed for 90 days and then went back, and then I got my visa worked out.
Yeah.
And then if you're older and retired, I think it's called Class C visa or something. I don't exactly know what the term is, but basically if you got money and you buy property, I think you can. But I mean, that's the different kind of
that's above our pay grade.
I'm in, so yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. So fun stuff. What does your social life look like? Obviously being besties with me.
Yep. We'll just put that label on it. Great. Besties, huh?
We're my besties here. Don't make me feel self-conscious.
We absolutely are.
Thank you.
But what else am I supposed to say at this point? You're just pressuring me into it.
He's just joking. He likes me really.
I'm joking. My social life. Well, at first it was all Annalisa's friends.
Well, when you got here, actually, can we just touch on the absolute disaster that was you landing in? Because you landed in at a very poignant time.
I landed in the very early, I think it was January of 2020. And as you might recall, just about a month and a half later, a thing called COVID happened. And
Italy was tough.
Italy was tough. I have many opinions about this. Italy was tough as far as the lockdown that we ended up having. But I think most people have this idea that COVID was worse here. More people died. And I don't actually think in the end that that's true. It's just that it happened here first, as far as in the Western world. It happened in Milan and Lombardy, in that area. That's where it first kind of exploded. So all the early pictures of COVID came from Italy. People were like, "Oh, you were in a war zone." I was like, "No, it was just bad everywhere, man." It was just. But I was here. I didn't speak the language, so I'm watching the news with tanks carrying dead bodies down the street, and it was terrifying. And the story is that you knew that something was happening. And we decided, Annalisa and I, to go visit her mother. Her mother lives in a town called Pescara on the Adriatic, about a 4-hour train ride away. And we just went down to kind of check on her. I was like, this is mad. What's going on? Let's go check on your mom. And while we were there, like 3 days in, the lockdown happened. And, in retrospect, it's like obvious that there would be a lockdown, but nobody knew that at all.
Yeah.
And so I did all of COVID in a small apartment with my girlfriend and her mother.
Great crap.
Which, if you just even a year before, if you told me that would be my life, it's totally crazy.
So you'd only been in Italy for a couple of weeks, really, at that point.
I had come the previous year for 3 months, like I was saying, just on the visa. So I'd done a trial run, but only in Florence. I actually gone to Pescara one time to meet her mom, of course. But so like I knew I wanted to be here, but I like moved officially, and then that's what happened. And it was a tough time because here in Italy, the lockdown was serious. You could not go outside to do anything except go to the grocery store or go to the hospital and die. I mean, it was really you go to the pharmacy and you had to like fill out a form. And I remember her saying, no, you got to fill out this form. It's like an auto declaration of what you're doing out. I was like, who cares? I'll just tell somebody that. And I was like, no, if you don't have this form, then if a cop stops you, you're going to have to pay like a couple €100 fine or whatever.
What?
It was crazy. And I remember we were up on, it was an apartment building with a balcony. And we were looking down, and these people were allowed to walk their dogs. Like, that was fine. They could like walk their dogs within like 100 meters of their house. And we'd look down those people, and we just, like, it was all we could do not to spit on them, just like flick cigarettes on them. Like, I hated dogs. I love dogs. I hated dogs at that point.
You just wanted one so bad.
I wanted one so bad that I hated all of them.
But then things started to get a little bit better. And the restrictions lifted a little bit. And you were able to make some friends.
I was finally able to make some friends. I just want to say one thing that, like, in the end about COVID, in the end, for me personally, I'm really glad that it happened the way that it did. I've like won family points in Annalisa's family for life because I was there. I didn't do anything to actually save her mom, but like I was there. And we went through it together. And so like, unfortunately her mom, who also taught English, spoke really good English, and is just a lovely person. And now we've kind of forged a bond for life now. And so in the end, I don't know what my life and like our relationship would be like, or my relationship with her family without that. But now I'm in like Flynn, It's so great. But yeah, we finally got out of that, weighing a good bit more weight, just looking bad. There are pictures of us from that time, just looked bad.
You showed me.
We came back to Florence. I remember walking around and there was just all these people. And I was like, I don't understand people anymore. How do you be around people? Aren't you supposed to die if that happens? And then I had to like slowly settle into my life after this like trauma, because it was basically trauma of COVID, and realize like, I need to make friends. This is a very important facet of moving to a new place, is developing community, because I had left a really good community in Chapel Hill that I'd lived there for more or less 20 years. And so knew a bunch of people, and it's harder as you get older to make new friends. And then really fortunately, I was just walking around one day and stumbled by a pub called Finnegan, which maybe
never heard of it.
Maybe readers of this podcast, listeners of this podcast have heard of. And there were a few gents sitting out front, two of which were Hugh, our friend Hugh, and another friend named Gary. And they weren't friends at the time. They were just speaking English. And I like not very coolly like got a beer and just like sat down at the table like next to them, and they were talking about books. And I was like, I'm gonna make these guys my friends. And I was like, I'm just gonna sit down, guys. I stood up, like, I'm just gonna sit down. We talk about a book. I haven't had a human conversation in English for months. And I just insinuated myself into that friend group slowly, and then got to meet everybody in that group.
Amazing.
So that was great. I met a bunch of people through my language school. So I studied Italian for about 1.5 years in this school. I met a bunch of people that way. And then I had Annalisa's friends. And so I sort of had 3 fields of friends. And then fortunately, Florence is small. And so you see the same people, not all the time, but you run into people. And that does help form community, or at least familiarity with people, and give you that feeling of home.
I think it took, like, obviously Cormac working in Finnegan's. Within 2 months, people were saying hello to him on the street. But I think it took me about 6 months to start like recognizing people on the street. But it is quite small. So I just want to say that to people, that you can make a network, and you can meet people.
It all depends on your personality, right? I mean, I think for
Yeah.
some people, this town will be too small. For some people, maybe too big.
Mhm.
For me, coming from North Carolina, where we have a lot of like medium-sized cities, I come from a kind of a medium-sized city, bigger than Florence, but it just felt very doable to me as a city.
Yeah.
I felt very lucky that this is where Annalisa had lived her whole life.
It's a really nice size city, I have to say. Like, just for like Irish people, it's smaller than Dublin but bigger than Galway.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
It's very, very walkable.
Yeah.
And you just see the same people, see the same heads.
Mhm.
So your day to day, kind of like you're working remote.
Yep.
You're freelance.
Yep.
And then you're pretty similar to me. You know, we don't have to work 50 hours a week. We've kind of been able to condense our work hours a little bit, which is very nice.
Did you just want to answer the question for me, Jane?
Oh my God, the sass. I don't usually get this level of sass from Cormac, okay? This is my first podcast recording that's not Cormac. And
it's a new day on the Irish American podcast.
I don't like it. Okay, what does your day look like, Jeremy? God's sake.
I mean, I have a pretty ridiculously wonderful lifestyle here. My average day will be waking up pretty early with the sun and with my girlfriend, who's a teacher. So she teaches in the high schools, we'd say, in America here. And they basically go to schools in the morning. So she will go to school in the morning, and then I have the morning time to do my creative work. And so I spend that time reading or writing or watching a movie if I feel like drawing, do my weird kind of artist stuff in my little cave of my apartment. So that's just lovely to be able to have that time because I'm not locked into a 9 to 5 as a freelancer.
Yeah.
And then I will most days have a lovely lunch with my girlfriend who will come home from school, and we'll have a nice healthy Italian lunch together. And then in the afternoon, I'll go to an office space they call a co-working space here. It's not really a term we use so much in America. And I have had the dumb luck of stumbling into a place called Conventino, which is an old convent that has been converted into artist workspaces. So like art spaces, studios for artists. And I was just there one day with my girlfriend and just asked if they had any co-working spaces. Got connected with an artist whose son was using his studio as for a startup company, but they wanted to make some money, so they gave me a table. So basically, I have a co-working space in an old convent where there are a bunch of crazy artists.
Beautiful.
And it's like a 5-minute bike ride from my apartment. So I bike there, I hang out, and I work for 5 or 6 hours at Conventino, and then I go home, or I go out with my lovely friends, my best friend James. Sometimes we go out. And that's basically the lifestyle. But to what you were saying, yeah, I mean, I work less here. And that's a very conscious choice. So when I first moved here, I was working like an American. I had a friend tell me once, like, why do you live in Italy and work like an American? Because I was just used to that. And I was working about 35, 40 plus hours a week as like a project manager in publishing. And making good money, but miserable. And then I realized I was pretty miserable with how much I was working, and I cut back to about 20 to 25 hours a week. But because the cost of living is a good bit lower here in certain ways, food is cheaper, tobacco is cheaper, lots of things are cheaper. I've been able to get by doing that. And it's been, the way I framed it and the way I think about it is I'm taking some early retirement now.
Yeah.
I worked very hard. At least 40, often 50 or 60 hours a week, not including my own writing, for my entire 20s and 30s. I mean, I was just working like a dog.
Yeah.
And I just decided, like, I'm going to live in Italy. I'm going to chill a little bit. I'm still going to work, I'm still going to make money. I'm adulting it still.
Yeah.
But I'm just not going to kill myself. And it's been one of the best decisions I ever made.
Because I think that ties into, we talk about that a lot, where it's like, I think that just ties into that question of what's your favorite thing about living in Italy or about living in Florence. I think for both of us, a huge benefit is that we've been able to cut back on our work. But other things that you like about Florence?
Other things that I like about Florence, I do, it's sort of a cliche thing to say, but I do love the lifestyle. That it's not so much of a work-oriented lifestyle in the sense that the first question that people ask in America is, what do you do? That's a cliche, but it's true. It's the first thing that people ask you when they're getting to know you. What do you do? And hardly anybody here asks you that question.
They don't really ask.
They don't ask you nearly as much because it is just less important in their culture. The most important things I've decided for myself in Italian culture are food, family, and friends.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the three things that they value a lot. And I think that's a much healthier approach. Now I'm going to talk a bunch of shit about Italians later, but but that particular approach is great, and it's been just a huge relief. And that I don't feel like I'm defined by a pretty set cultural standard of what success is now, and I get to decide what my own version of success is, and that is having a lovely girlfriend, living in a lovely place, and having lovely friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I really do appreciate that, and also like what comes with that is the food, which is just healthier food. I lost 25 pounds living here without dieting, just because I eat healthy food every day, mostly vegetarian, some meat, but not very much.
Mm-hmm.
Pasta every day. Then I lost 25 pounds.
Wow.
And also biking and walking around, you know. So I feel a lot healthier than in America, because we just put a bunch of crap in our food. I don't know if you've heard that.
Yeah.
So that's been great.
What's the food like for you now when you go home? Do you taste, you're like, oh God.
I gain 10 pounds every time I go back.
You do actually?
I literally gain 10 pounds.
But now you do get off the plane and immediately go to, what's your takeaway place that you go to?
Do you remember? Can you remember?
Is it Bojangles?
It is Bojangles.
I remember it.
Listeners in North Carolina in the Southeast know it very well. It would definitely be my on death row last meal. Would be Bojangles. And when I get off the plane, my father picks me up, and we don't even discuss it anymore. We just go directly to Bojangles. And it's just greasy Southern cooking biscuits and fried chicken, and it's amazing.
So then, what are some of the things that you don't like about living in Florence?
Well, I'll just group Florence and Italy together, if that's okay.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about the bureaucracy, and that really is.
They love a bit of paperwork.
They love a bit of paperwork, and it's everything. It's, you know, your health insurance, your identity cards, and permesso di soggiorno, and then getting residency here was this nightmare of a thing. Like, just basically, what all residency really means is that, like, Italy knows that you live there. Yeah. And that you live at this address. You're a resident in this town. You'd think you'd be like, I live here. Okay. No, I mean, I literally, oh God, and to make the Italy recognize that I'm in a relationship with Annalisa, I literally had to like go to the American consulate to declare officially that I wasn't married, or I'd never been married. I wasn't currently married. I had to get that document translated officially with an official stamp. I had to take that document with a marco di bollo, which is like this stamp thing that's like 16 euros, to the courthouse and get that officially registered. And then that was just one little step of all the paperwork I had to put together to just have Italy recognize that I'm in a relationship with Annalisa. That bit of living in Italy is really, really hard to deal with. I can't say that I knew that that was going to happen going in, I guess. And so I've been pretty stoic about it most of the time, but sometimes it just gets really overwhelming, and you just look at the list of things that you have to do, and it's gross. It
will be really nice to have a 5-year break from that.
Oh my God. Can't believe there'll be something else though. Something will happen, you know? And then other things, I don't want to linger on it too much, but I feel like, you know, we've talked about it openly, and I'm not the only person who has said it, but Fiorentini, people from Florence, have a reputation for being a little cold and a little not necessarily polite and nice. And there's this.
They think we have some friends who are from Florence, in our Finnegan's circle, and like they think it is the most bizarre thing that we invite people over for dinner, and like we invite people for dinner parties and over to our house. They just cannot comprehend that we would invite people
to your home
over for drinks in the house.
But they would go out and eat with people. Right?
Oh, yeah. Going out is fine. But going to somebody's home, they're like, no, that's my home. Like, my family come to my home.
That's crazy. No, that's a really great way to describe the Fiorentini, like, mindset.
Yeah, Southern Italians, kind of Jesus, they're like, completely different. They're like...
Exactly. And, like, we went to Napoli, and I was there about 24 hours, and I was like, wait a minute. everyone's nice. People are being polite.
Yeah.
When you walk down the street, people are getting out of your way and not pretending like you're invisible.
Yeah.
And so it is a very much, we're sounding terrible, like terrible people, but it's really not just our experience. Lots of people experience it.
Yes.
And if you come here to visit, you will experience it.
And I do understand, like, it's only now having lived on Via de Servi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exposing our past apartment. But we lived right beside the Duomo.
Yeah.
And like, I was sick of tourists, and we weren't even living there in the height of summer.
But apparently it's not just that, because that's been
it's definitely a
since the
cultural
Renaissance, you know? I mean, I really think it comes from, I don't know, but I think that it comes from the fact that there was a time when Florence was like the richest city in the world. It was the banking capital of the Western world.
Yeah.
And a certain kind of arrogance kind of arose from that filtered from the top down to the bottom. And that everybody wants something from you, so you can't trust anybody. I had to kind of come from somewhere, because kids are taught to be that way. You know, I mean, it's just the thing that's going to keep propagating. And it's so starkly different when you go to another city.
Yeah.
When you go to another town.
It's mad now. When Cormac working in the new job, like, he's making friends with a lot more Italians, and a couple of them are from Florence, and like, there are very similar traits, like, within them. You know, it's bizarre. It's a certain type of person.
And then once you're in a group, like, we have a mutual friend, Tiziano, who's very Fiorentino. Fiorentino. But like, we're in with him, and when we walk in, he's like, ciao, and he's like, super friendly and want to do anything for. Once you're in, you're cool, but it's really hard to get in. Yeah. They're not sending out invitations to get in their friend groups at all. And maybe some of this is, I think you and I come from like pretty polite cultures. Like, that's part of like the grease that makes the social wheels go, is at least we're going to be like polite to each other.
As Dylan Warren says, it's like Irish people, when they drink whiskey, they can go one of two ways, where it's like, come in, have my bed. You know, like Irish are very much that way. Yeah. So,
and I come from the South, what we call the South in America, and like, people, the second you walk away, might call you a motherfucker, but to your face, you're being really polite. Yeah. And there is a sense that, like, if you fall out on the street, people are going to help, pick you up. And you do kind of take care of each other. Now, the South, famous for awful things, also racism, etc. So not like saying it's the greatest place in the world, but like, politeness is a very important thing. And so when you come to a place where it's not a thing at all, it's really hard to deal with. For example, you don't say hi to people on the street you don't know. In North Carolina, you say hi to everybody. And it's a way that we are telling each other, I'm not going to kill you. You're not going to kill me. Yeah. Right? I'm not a serial killer. Maybe I am, but today I'm not. Today I'm not going to kill you. Yeah.
Likewise, you wouldn't start a conversation in a bar with a Florentino. That would be very odd.
No. But here, if you say hello to somebody, I remember when I was first here with Annalisa, and we were walking around, and I would be like, hi, who are you? Ciao. And she's like, what are you doing? Do you know that person? Like, no, I don't know. I've just moved here. I don't know this person. She said, no, we don't do that. She like literally shamed me. She's like, we don't do
that. It took 14 months for our tobacco guy, when we were living in the Altarno, like 14 months for the tobacco guy to actually like smile and say hello and give us a bit of chat in the morning. Like,
Same with we got the pasticceria place for pastries in the morning, and it's tobacco as well. And it took over a year. Yeah. Like, we go there every day, guy. It's like, you know me, man. You know what I get here.
You know I speak Italian.
Just a ciao, come inside. Like, ask me how I am one time.
And then just two final questions. You're Italian. How is it? How did you get there? How did you learn it? Obviously, having a partner who speaks fluent Italian is amazing. Yeah. But what recommendations for people?
I'm not. I've never learned another language in my life, like a lot of Americans. I'd studied a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of Latin when I was in school, but retained none of it, which is just, America's very far from the rest of the world, and so it doesn't necessarily seem as fundamental to your life that you have to learn another language. So I never really had. So that part of my brain was not very well developed. And it has been hard for me to learn the language. I'm not a natural language learner. My girlfriend, for example, speaks German, a good bit of French, English very well. And she just has a thing, and she doesn't even think she's good at it, but she learned that habit growing up. It's like a habit and a pattern that you learn. So it has been really hard for me. I mean, I started studying when I was still in America. I came here thinking I was hot shit and like could not do anything, could not understand anything. I studied at the school here that caters to foreigners learning Italian, and that helped a lot. Obviously, I mean, that's where I got the basis of the structure of the grammar. And then speaking Italian with my girlfriend, I think we did a thing that's pretty rare. Is that our relationship language early on, by definition, was English because I didn't speak any Italian.
Yeah,
and so we just spoke English to each other. But over the course of like my first year living in Florence, we made a conscious decision, like, I need to switch to Italian. We need to speak only in Italian or I'm not going to learn.
that's really good.
And we switched to Italian. And very fortunately, she taught Italian to foreigners for many years. That was her job. Okay. And so she has always been and still is really good at
she gave me a few lessons.
Correcting me politely. I don't know how she doesn't throw me out a window because I know I make the same mistakes that I've made for 4 years. I'm saying the same wrong words, the wrong grammar constructions. Like, I know I'm doing it all wrong.
Their grammar is outrageously complicated, though.
It's very different from English. Yeah. I mean, there are languages I think that are more complicated, but it's that I heard somewhere that that's just easy. Italian's pretty easy, and it's not, especially coming from English. Yeah, it's very different, and most of their verbs that they use most frequently are all irregular.
They're all irregular. There's more irregular than
different
regular.
Past tenses. They have the subjunctive sense. Like that, it's not easy. Mm-hmm. I hit a real. I mean, obviously, talking with Annalisa helped a lot. And then about a year and a half ago, I got to the point where I could actually read very slowly. I could read books. I could read novels in Italian. It was very slow.
So how long did it take you? 3.5 years of solid Italian?
I've been about 2. I mean, I think I started reading my first books painfully slowly within the first year and a half or so.
Wow.
But I only got to where it was starting to be kind of fun, where I didn't have to look up every other word.
Yeah.
I could actually read a book and have a couple of weeks, I could get through a whole novel. That was just a year and a half ago. So after maybe 2.5 to 3 years of studying. And then that just was a huge jump for me in acquiring vocabulary and understanding grammar and then understanding the way that Italians put their sentences together. Mm-hmm. You obviously just don't translate an English sentence into Italian sentence. The word order is different and you say things in different ways, and reading it on the page really helps you kind of get those patterns lodged in your head. And so that was a big thing for me. My main learning tool has in that sense been the Kindle. It's been really amazing for me because you have the Kindle, you can read an Italian book, and if you don't know a word, you just touch the word and it gives you the definition. And as far as and then sometimes I'll write the words down in a notebook, and that kind of helps you remember. But often I don't even do that. I just, I don't know a word. If I can't comprehend a sentence.
Well, didn't Cormac just get a little Kindle?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's been a great tool. Now I'm a literature guy and a reader, so that's right up my alley. But that was when I really took off. And I would say I'm conversational now. I mean, I'm definitely conversational. I'm fluent in the sense that I think in Italian, I dream in Italian. I can carry a conversation with Italians all day long. Mm-hmm. And it's not exhausting anymore. I think it used to be really exhausting to speak Italian. Yeah. Now it's pretty natural.
But you were away for the weekend a couple of weeks ago, and you had previously met those friends and everyone was speaking English. And this time you were a full weekend speaking Italian. By the end, you were just I need a beer.
No, exactly. Yeah, we got there, and then her friend, Annalisa's friend, just started speaking Italian to me. And then I spoke a sentence in English to her, and she's like, "Oh, are we speaking English?" In a way, we're not speaking English, Jeremy. You have to speak Italian. I was like, "Oh, okay." It's
but you did it.
That weekend was a little tiring. Yes.
Yeah. No, that's fine. And then what does the future hold? What does future your plan is to stay here?
My plan is to stay here. I mean, we have no plans to leave. I mean, it's, I guess, a little bit personal, but there's a chance that we might at some point move to Pescara to be closer to Annalisa's mom, which is a lovely beach town on the sea. We're a block from the sea, which is pretty
very excited to go there in
the summers. It's not a famously beautiful Italian city, but I've quite enjoyed going there, and the culture there is pretty cool. So that's a thing that might happen in the future, but we're here. I mean, I'm
it's
here.
Italy. Yeah.
It's Italy for me. For the foreseeable future. Amazing. I think Annalisa and I are both the kind of people that something could happen and we could move to Germany or something. I think the only thing that won't happen is I hope my mom's not listening. I'm not going to move back to America. I just don't see that happening. maybe if there's family health things, I'll go back for extended periods. But I'm here now.
Yeah.
It's been the right life change.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then final question. If anybody from America especially was thinking about moving to Italy, is there any top piece of advice or any just some piece of information that you want to give them?
I go back and say the thing that I said before, which is literally what I say to everybody who, like tourists who talk to me about maybe moving here, which is prepare yourself for a lot of frustration with the bureaucracy, and you won't be disappointed when it happens.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. It happens to everybody. And I really think I'm pretty stoic about it now. I like to complain about it because it's kind of funny to complain about. And then when you're, in the waiting room of hell for 6 hours, you can't help but have a bad day, right?
Yeah.
But in general, I don't really get stressed out about it anymore. So I would definitely recommend that. And then I would recommend a trial run for particularly American. If you can come for 3 months on your visa and to see if you like it. For example, I like Florence. It's worked out really well for me, but it might not be the right city for you. Don't just move around the world,
Yeah, don't do that.
That seemed like a underhanded insult. No. It's not around the world though. You're just right around the corner.
Oh yeah, we're only a 2-hour flight home.
Oh, so jealous.
Yeah, it is great, I have to say. Could you tell us a little bit about your hometown? Because you rave about it constantly.
Sure. Yeah.
And, I don't know if I'm ever going to make it back to America.
What do you mean never going to make it? You'll make it back to America. But maybe not to Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Maybe not, but... you just, it seems like a really cool place. So I just like for people, if they were doing a road trip or something.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, so I was born in a town called Durham, North Carolina, which is very close to a town called Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Durham is a pretty big town, about 500,000 people. And Chapel Hill is a much smaller town. I think less than 100,000 permanent residents. Definitely less than, I think, 60 or 70,000 permanent residents. But then a very big University of North Carolina. Chapel Hill, which is most famous, sadly, because it should be famous for many other things, but most famous probably for Michael Jordan, played basketball.
That's where the obsession with basketball comes from.
I mean, if the obsession with basketball comes from, it's the greatest team in the history of all sports, professional or amateur. But what has this created was this big university in this small town in the middle of North Carolina, and it's the oldest public university in America. So it's over 200 years old, which by our standards is pretty darn old in America.
Yeah.
And it's a bubble in both the good and bad ways, and that it's a very, very liberal bubble. I'm obviously pretty left-leaning, as you might have picked up. And it's this sort of delightful liberal bubble in the middle of a very red state, very Trump state now. And it's the kind of town where there's music every night in about 10 different venues. And there's bars and there's students. And it's a type of town where you can see 2 men or 2 women walking down the street, holding hands and kissing on the street. And it's not a thing. And a lot of especially in the South and a lot of places in America, that's not a thing. It's a very, very open, left-leaning, lovely place. Also very beautiful. There's trees and hills and birds. And it's just a really, really lovely small town. And I've lived there for most of my adult life, and I do miss it. I mean, I guess I don't necessarily miss it so much as it's just a part of me. I think about it as home. It's where my novel was set, a fictional version of that town. It's there's
a nice place.
It's a nice.
And you've also been to my hometown.
I have,
which I find really bizarre. But you came to Ireland.
I came to Ireland about 2 years ago. I went and met my mom and her best friend.
Which is it was only a couple of months before we met. So
that's right.
Yeah, mad.
And my mom and her best friend and I were traveling buddies. Weirdly, I don't know how that happened, but we just get along great, and we just travel together. So me and two lovely ladies, 2 lovely older ladies, and we travel around. And they had been to Ireland once before, but they wanted to go again.
So you did Dublin, Cork, Galway, was it? Or
I did. So we met. I flew into Dublin. Went to Galway. The only thing I saw at Galway was the bus station. And then we left and went to Spittle.
So random. You literally drove past my house.
Yes. And then what's the other? There's another town that we went to a little bit farther north. It's a little bit bigger town. Anyway, we stayed there, but we're always in the countryside, which is lovely. I mean, I did hikes and walking on the beach and not getting rained on. And I mean, it was really, really lovely, but I didn't do a lot of I didn't do Galway, for example, which I kind of regret. And then as I was leaving, went to Dublin for a day.
Okay. Well, that's good. Dublin is a day. No,
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. But I would have liked Galway or Cork or some of the other cities, towns. I think I really would have liked. Living in one of those towns. And I mean, I had a great time. You guys are very nice and funny. And,
well, you'll just have to come to Galway with us.
I'll just have to come to Galway with you. But you're obviously not coming to Chapel Hill with me, so.
Well, maybe if I win the Euro Millions.
You haven't been invited yet. So.
Oh, burn.
We'll see how this pans out next time on the.
So, Jeremy, thank you so much. We're definitely going to have you on again.
Thank you very much.
We have so much to talk about, including Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan.
We're never going to talk about. We can maybe talk about Joe Rogan again because he's an interesting character. Tucker, no. Never again.
Oh, Lord. Well, thank you so much. As I've said, we're going to link Jeremy's book in the description, and please support because, books, people don't read them as much as they used to.
That's true. But people, well, that's a whole other podcast. People are still reading, man. People still read.
They do.
Especially my book. Millions and millions of people. No, about 30 people read my book. But it was its own little success. And it's a funny book set in a video store with 10 movie references every day.
About as much people as listen to our podcast. So maybe you'll double your readership.
I never got recognized on the street, though, like you.
Stop. That's from the TikToks. That's not from the podcast. I'm actually mortified. All right. Thanks very much, Jeremy, for joining us. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jane. Bye.